The origins of the Roman Centurion. From Republic to Empire. The Roman Centurion was more than just a battlefield commander. He was the backbone of Rome's military machine, the enforcer of discipline, and, in many ways, the embodiment of Roman martial values. Yet his role did not emerge fully formed. It evolved through centuries of military innovation, political upheaval, and the relentless march of Rome from a city-state to a sprawling empire. To understand the significance of the Centurion, we must begin at the very roots of Rome's military system and trace its transformation from the early Republic to the height of imperial dominance. The citizen soldier of early Rome. The birth of the Roman army. In its earliest days, Rome was little more than a collection of villages on the banks of the Tiber, surrounded by hostile tribes such as the Etruscans, Samnites, and Volsci. Warfare was not a profession, but a necessity of survival. The Roman army of the early Republic 509 to 300 BC was modeled after Greek hoplite warfare, where citizen soldiers, primarily landowning men, would don heavy armor and fight in dense phalanx formations. However, Rome was not Greece. The rugged Italian terrain and the more mobile nature of its enemies made the rigid hoplite formation unsuitable. Rome needed a military system that was both adaptable and sustainable. Thus, the army began evolving into the manipular legion, a more flexible formation where smaller units could maneuver independently. It was within this system that the first centurions emerged, not as the officers we recognize today, but as battlefield leaders of centuria, small companies of about 80 to 100 men. The centurion's role in the manipular legion. By the 4th century BCE, the Roman army had shifted from a Greek-style phalanx to the triplex acies formation, consisting of 3 main lines: hastati, young, inexperienced soldiers in the front; principes, more seasoned warriors in the middle; triarii, hardened veterans in the rear, forming the last line of defense. Each of these lines was divided into maniples, smaller tactical units led by centurions. Unlike in later periods, early centurions were not professional soldiers, but were often elected by their peers based on experience and personal bravery. This was a time when the Roman military was still fundamentally a citizen militia rather than a standing army. The Marian reforms. The birth of the professional centurion. The crisis of the late Republic. As Rome expanded across Italy and beyond, it found itself locked in near constant warfare. The old system, where only landowning citizens could serve in the army, began to crumble. By the late 2nd century BCE, repeated wars had devastated small farmers, the backbone of the Roman army, forcing them into urban poverty. This led to a manpower crisis, as Rome could no longer field enough citizen soldiers. Enter Gaius Marius, a military reformer who would redefine the Roman army. In 107 BCE, Marius implemented radical changes, eliminating property requirements. Now, even the landless poor could enlist. Standardizing equipment. Every soldier was now issued the same weapons and armor, creating a professional standing army. Soldiers served for 16 years and became a career force. This was a turning point in Roman military history. It not only ensured a steady supply of troops, but also elevated the role of the centurion, who now became a professional officer responsible for training, discipline, and battlefield leadership. No longer were centurions just elected warriors, they were now seasoned professionals, rising through the ranks based on merit, experience, and, sometimes, political patronage. The hard life of a centurion. A centurion's duties went beyond simply leading men in battle. He was responsible for enforcing discipline, maintaining morale, and ensuring that his troops were constantly drilled in formation fighting. The famous saying, "Discipline makes the army strong," was more than just rhetoric. It was a fundamental belief of Roman military culture. Centurions were known for their vine staff vitus, a symbol of their authority, which they did not hesitate to use on undisciplined soldiers. Their training methods were notoriously brutal: harsh physical drills, forced marches, and relentless weapons practice, but it was this rigorous discipline that made the Roman legions so effective. Yet, despite their authority, centurions were also expected to lead from the front. Unlike many officers in modern armies, they suffered higher casualty rates than the average soldier because they were always in the thick of the fight, rallying their men, and often being the first to charge into enemy lines. The Augustan reforms. The centurion as the backbone of empire. The transition from republic to empire. By the time of Julius Caesar and Augustus, the Roman army had evolved into an unstoppable force, but it was also deeply politicized. Generals like Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus used their armies as personal power bases, leading to a series of devastating civil wars. When Augustus emerged victorious in 27 BC, he set about reforming the military into a more stable and permanent institution. Under Augustus, the army was reshaped into a standing professional force with 28 legions, each with around 5,000 men, a fixed salary for soldiers paid from the imperial treasury, a retirement system, including land grants or pensions. With these reforms, the centurion's role became even more crucial. As Rome expanded into distant provinces, centurions became not only military officers, but also local administrators, tax collectors, and enforcers of Roman law. They were often the highest-ranking Roman officials that provincial subjects encountered, making them critical in maintaining imperial control. The prestige and perks of a centurion. Despite their grueling responsibilities, centurions enjoyed significant perks. Higher pay. A centurion earned at least 10 to 15 times the salary of an ordinary soldier. Social mobility. Many centurions were promoted from the ranks, allowing commoners to rise into positions of power. Command over elite troops. Some centurions led special units like the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal bodyguards. Yet, their position also came with extreme danger. While ordinary soldiers could survive battles by staying in formation, centurions were expected to lead from the front. In major engagements like the Teutoburg Forest 09 CE and the Jewish Revolt 6673 CE, centurions often bore the brunt of the fighting. The rise of the centurion as Rome's unshakable core. From the early Republic to the dawn of the Empire, the centurion evolved from a simple battlefield officer into one of the most respected and feared figures in Roman society. His discipline, leadership, and willingness to fight shoulder to shoulder with his men made him the backbone of Rome's military machine. Yet, as Rome's empire grew, so did the responsibilities and dangers of its centurions. No longer were they merely soldiers, they were now enforcers of imperial policy, political players, and, in many cases, the last line of defense against chaos. But what happens when the backbone of an empire begins to break? The breaking point. Rome's dependence on barbarian might. We trace the origins and rise of the centurion, from the disciplined ranks of the Republic's legions to the formidable command structures of the empire. The centurion was the backbone of Rome's military machine, enforcing discipline, leading from the front, and ensuring Rome's supremacy on the battlefield. But as Rome expanded, so too did the pressures on its legions. By the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, the empire faced new threats both from external enemies and internal decay. The disciplined legions of Augustus' time had become something different, an army increasingly filled with foreign recruits, mercenaries, and Germanic foederati-allied tribes. This second part will examine how Rome's increasing reliance on non-Roman soldiers, particularly barbarian auxiliaries and foederati, weak, and the role of the centurion, ultimately leading to the collapse of the Western Roman military system. The crisis of the 3rd century. The crumbling foundations. Rome's first signs of military decline. By the mid-3rd century CE, the Roman Empire was in crisis. The crisis of the 3rd century to 35 to 280 for CE saw nearly 50 emperors rise and fall in just a few decades, many assassinated by their own troops. The once mighty legions were stretched thin, defending an empire that spanned from Britain to Mesopotamia. 3 major problems began to emerge. Constant warfare. Rome was now fighting on multiple fronts against Germanic tribes in the north, Persian invasions in the east, and internal civil wars. Economic collapse. Inflation skyrocketed, and Rome struggled to pay its troops, leading to mutinies and desertions. Declining recruitment. Fewer Roman citizens were willing or able to serve in the legions, forcing Rome to turn increasingly to barbarians to fill its ranks. This is where we begin to see the gradual decline of the centurion's traditional role. As Rome recruited more non-Romans, military discipline, once the hallmark of the legions, began to erode. Many barbarian recruits had little loyalty to Rome itself and fought only for pay, making them unreliable in times of crisis. The rise of the foederati. Rome's greatest gamble. By the late 3rd century, Rome had begun formally enlisting entire barbarian tribes as foederati. Allied forces granted land in exchange for military service. These included the Goths, Visigoths, and Ostrogoths, the Franks, the Vandals, the Alans, and Sarmatians. This was a desperate move. While foederati helped Rome defend its borders, it undermined the authority of centurions and traditional legionary command structures. Many of these barbarian forces fought under their own chieftains rather than obeying Roman officers. The real disaster, however, came in 378 CE, at the Battle of Adrianople. The Battle of Adrianople, the end of the Roman legion, the Gothic revolt and the downfall of Roman discipline. In the 370s, the Visigoths, fleeing the Huns, sought asylum within Roman territory. Emperor Valens agreed, allowing them to settle in the empire as foederati, but corrupt Roman officials mistreated the Goths, starving them and demanding bribes. The Visigoths rebelled, leading to full-scale war. At Adrianople 378 CE, Valens led an army including many centurions trained in traditional Roman tactics against the Goths. What happened next was a catastrophe. The Goths used mobile cavalry tactics, encircling the Roman forces and wiping out nearly two-thirds of the army. Valens himself was killed, and for the first time in centuries, an entire Roman imperial army was annihilated by barbarians on Roman soil. This battle marked the end of the traditional Roman legion. After Adrianople, Rome relied more and more on Gothic and Germanic foederati. The Centurion, once the enforcer of Roman discipline, saw his role diminished as barbarian warlords took greater command over the military. The sack of Rome for 10 CE, a symbol of military collapse. Alaric the Visigoth, a Roman officer turned enemy. One of the most striking examples of Rome's reliance on barbarian soldiers was Alaric I, the Visigothic king who sacked Rome in 10 CE. Ironically, Alaric had once been a Roman foederati commander, leading Gothic troops in Roman campaigns. But when Rome failed to honor its promises of land and payment, Alaric turned against his former masters. In 10 CE, Alaric's Visigoths marched into Rome and looted the city, marking the first time in 800 years that Rome had fallen to an enemy. The empire still existed, but this event was a psychological blow. It showed that Rome could no longer defend itself, even at its very heart. Where were the Roman legions? By this time, Rome's legions had become shadows of their former selves. Many Roman soldiers were now Germanic mercenaries with little loyalty to Rome itself. Traditional centurions, who once commanded disciplined legions, found themselves leading units that were barely distinguishable from the enemy. This raises an important question. Was the Roman military still Roman at all? The fall of the Western Roman Empire for 76 CE, the last Centurion, the end of an era. The final blow came in 76 CE, when the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, a former Roman officer of barbarian descent, deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus. By this point, the Roman army had completely changed. The traditional legionary system had disappeared, replaced by mercenary war bands. Many Roman generals were now Germanic kings and warlords, rather than trained centurions. Roman military discipline and hierarchy had collapsed, leaving a fragmented and ineffective force. The centurion, who had once been the symbol of Roman order and command, was now obsolete. Rome's legacy and the transformation of warfare. While the Western Roman Empire fell, its military traditions lived on in the Byzantine Empire, Eastern Rome, and later in medieval European armies. The idea of professional officers, battlefield discipline, and small unit leadership, all pioneered by centurions, would influence military history for centuries to come. But in the West, Rome's military system was no more. The empire that had once relied on its own disciplined citizen soldiers had become dependent on foreign mercenaries, and when those mercenaries stopped being paid, they turned against Rome. The fatal mistake: Rome's dependence on barbarians. The rise and fall of the Roman centurion reflects the broader rise and fall of Rome itself. The centurion rose to power during Rome's expansion, enforcing iron discipline in the legions. As Rome grew too large, it relied on barbarian mercenaries, undermining the authority of its officers. Eventually, the Roman army became unrecognizable, and with it, the centurion's role faded into history. This was Rome's greatest mistake, trading its own strength for short-term survival. The lessons of Rome's decline still resonate today. A powerful military is only as strong as the discipline and loyalty of those who serve it. The Byzantine centurion, Rome's legacy in the East. We witness the downfall of the Roman centurion alongside the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, the shift from disciplined legions to mercenary-filled armies, the growing reliance on barbarian foederati, and the final blows at Adrianople 378 CE, the sack of Rome for 10 CE, and the fall of the Western Empire for 76 CE all signified the end of an era. But while the West fell, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, endured. Here, Military evolution continued, blending Roman discipline, Greek strategy, and Eastern innovations. This part will explore how the Byzantines transformed the centurion's role, adapting Rome's military traditions for a new era of warfare. The centurion evolved into the banda commander, leading elite units in a highly organized and professional military system. The Byzantine Empire, the survival of Rome. Rome reborn in the East. After the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, remained intact. Unlike the West, the Eastern half had wealth, trade, and a strong defensive position, allowing it to endure for nearly 1,000 more years. The Byzantine military was deeply influenced by Roman traditions, but was forced to adapt to new threats. Persian Sassanid Empire, a long-standing enemy, challenging Byzantine power in the East. Germanic and Slavic tribes, pressuring the Balkans and Anatolia. Islamic caliphates, emerging in the 7th century, rapidly conquering vast territories. Steppe nomads Avars, Bulgars, Pechenegs, raiding Byzantine lands and forcing military adaptations. To survive, the Byzantines transformed the Roman army into a highly structured force, emphasizing smaller, professional armies automata instead of massive legions. Cavalry over infantry dominance, adapting to new warfare styles. A complex system of military hierarchy, where centurions evolved into officers of elite units. The evolution of the centurion. From legions to banda commanders. From the centurion to the kenturchos. In the Byzantine military, the Roman centurion was replaced by the kenturchos, a commander of a small banda military unit. These officers still retained some aspects of the old Roman centurion. They were responsible for discipline and battlefield tactics. They led their men from the front, maintaining Byzantine military professionalism. They played a key role in the new Byzantine military structure, the Taugmata, Byzantium's professional army. Unlike the massive, citizen-based legions of Rome, Byzantium relied on the Taugmata, elite professional units stationed in key regions. These troops were highly trained and loyal to the emperor, smaller but more maneuverable than Roman legions. Equipped with a mix of Roman-style weapons and Eastern innovations such as composite bows, kenturcho former centurions commanded these units, playing a vital role in Byzantine military campaigns. Thematic armies, a decentralized defense. By the 7th century, the Byzantines developed the thematic system, a decentralized military structure that allowed local commanders to raise armies in their provinces. Each theme province had its own military forces, led by a strategos general, with kenturcho commanding smaller units. This system ensured Rome's military legacy survived in a new form, giving Byzantine armies flexibility and resilience that the old Roman legions lacked. Byzantine warfare, tactics, strategy, and the new centurion. Tactical innovations. How Byzantium defended itself. The Byzantine military developed sophisticated strategies, blending Roman discipline with Greek ingenuity. Some key tactics included combined arms warfare, mixing infantry, cavalry, and archers for maximum battlefield effectiveness. Cataphracts, the Byzantine heavy cavalry, a devastating force that combined the shock tactics of knights with the discipline of Roman legions. Greek fire, a terrifying naval weapon that ensured Byzantine dominance at sea. Defensive fortifications. Unlike the expansionist Roman Empire, Byzantium focused on fortresses and defensive warfare, protecting key cities and supply lines. The role of the kenturchos in Byzantine warfare. The kenturcho played a critical role in commanding small tactical units. Unlike the traditional Roman centurion, who led a cohort of infantry, the Byzantine kenturchos commanded a more diverse force, often including spearmen scoutatoi for holding the line, archers toxotai for ranged attacks, cavalry units cataphracto for shock charges. These officers had to be flexible, tactically aware, and capable of handling different battlefield situations. Byzantium's greatest battles and the centurion's last stand. The Battle of Yarmouk 636 CE. The loss of the East. One of the greatest defeats in Byzantine history. Yarmouk saw the Islamic Caliphate crush the Byzantine army, leading to the loss of Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. Despite the tactical expertise of Byzantine commanders, the Arab forces outmaneuvered and outlasted the Byzantines. The Siege of Constantinople 717-718 CE. Byzantium strikes back. One of the greatest victories of the Byzantine military, The defense of Constantinople against the Umayyad Caliphate was a testament to the Byzantine military's resilience. The use of Greek fire, disciplined fortifications, and well-trained troops led by experienced Centurion ensured Constantinople would remain impregnable for centuries. The Battle of Manzikert 1071 CE, the beginning of the end. By the 11th century, the Byzantine military had declined due to corruption, internal strife, and reliance on mercenaries similar to the mistakes of the Western Roman Empire. At Manzikert, the Byzantines suffered a devastating defeat to the Seljuk Turks, losing control of Anatolia, their military heartland. This defeat marked the slow decline of Byzantine military power and the eventual fall of Constantinople in 1453. The Centurion's final legacy in Byzantium. The Byzantine military may have been different from the Roman legions, but it carried Rome's spirit into the medieval era. The Centurion's Byzantine Centurion was a professional officer, ensuring discipline and battlefield effectiveness. Byzantine tactics blended Roman organization, Greek strategy, and Eastern innovation. Byzantium survived for 1,000 years after the fall of Rome, proving the adaptability of the Roman military tradition. Yet, just like Rome, Byzantium eventually fell, succumbing to the Ottoman Empire in 1453. The Byzantine military, once the guardian of Rome's legacy, was no more. That the influence of the Roman centurion lived on in the military structures of medieval Europe, influencing the knights, commanders, and officers of future armies. The centurion's legacy in medieval and modern warfare. The Roman centurion may have disappeared with the fall of the Western Roman Empire, and its Byzantine counterpart, the Centurion, may have faded after the fall of Constantinople in 1453, but their legacy did not die. Instead, their influence shaped the military traditions of Europe and beyond, evolving into the officers and commanders of medieval, early modern, and even contemporary armies. In this final part, we will explore how the centurion's leadership, discipline, and battlefield command were adopted by medieval knights, Renaissance captains, and modern officers. The centurion's core values, leadership from the front, adaptability, and unwavering discipline, remain relevant in military structures to this day. The centurion's influence on medieval warfare. The fall of Rome and the fragmentation of warfare. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, Europe descended into what historians once called the Dark Ages. Unlike Rome's structured legions, warfare became highly localized, centered around feudal lords, mercenary bands, and castle-based defenses. However, remnants of Roman military tradition survived in three key areas: the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire, which continued to maintain a Roman-style officer class; the Frankish Kingdom; and the Holy Roman Empire, where Roman military strategies influenced early feudal armies. The Catholic Church, which preserved Roman administrative and organizational principles, applying them to military orders like the Knights Templar. The medieval knight, a noble successor. The closest medieval equivalent to the Roman centurion was the knight. Like the centurion, the knight was a leader of men, expected to command troops on the battlefield, trained in discipline, tactics, and strategy from an early age, expected to lead by example, often charging into battle alongside their men. However, knights lacked the meritocratic structure of the centurionate. Whereas centurions rose through the ranks based on skill, knights were usually of noble birth, with military leadership tied to aristocratic privilege. This difference marked a major shift from Roman professionalism to medieval feudalism. The military orders, Rome's disciples in the Crusades. During the Crusades 1095 to 1291, military orders such as the Knights Templar, Hospitallers, and Teutonic Knights revived elements of Roman military discipline. These orders maintained permanent, professional military forces, unlike most feudal armies, emphasized rigorous training and organization, similar to the old legions, deployed officers to function like centurions, overseeing groups of warriors with strict battlefield tactics. While the knightly orders retained the chivalric traditions of the Middle Ages, their structured military command was a spiritual successor to Roman military organization. The Renaissance and the return of Roman military discipline. The condottieri, the centurions of the Italian wars. During the Renaissance 14th–17th centuries, Italy became a battleground for European powers. The old medieval feudal system declined, replaced by mercenary armies commanded by professional officers. The condottieri, Italian mercenary captains, revived many aspects of Roman military leadership. They emphasize discipline and battlefield organization, similar to centurions. Many studied Roman military treatises, including Vegetius to Re Militari, to shape their strategies. They commanded smaller, well-trained units, resembling Roman cohorts. These commanders marked the transition from feudal warfare to early modern military professionalism, echoing the structure that Rome had once perfected. Maurice of Nassau, the 16th century, reformer of warfare. By the late 16th century, European armies rediscovered Roman tactical formations. Maurice of Nassau 1567 to 1625, a Dutch general, reintroduced drilled infantry formations inspired by the Roman manipule system, standardized ranks, giving officers clear roles similar to centurions, coordinated maneuver tactics, ensuring discipline under fire. Maurice's reforms paved the way for Napoleonic warfare, proving that the Roman model of military organization was still relevant. The Napoleonic Wars and the birth of the modern officer corps. The French Revolution. Meritocracy revives the centurion. During the French Revolution 1789 to 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power by reintroducing merit-based military promotions. Just like the Roman army once promoted capable centurions, Napoleon ensured that skilled officers, not just aristocrats, led his forces. This led to the creation of the modern officer corps, structured as follows. Lieutenants and captains. Modern centurions led companies of men. Colonels and generals. Modern legates commanded larger formations. A structured chain of command ensured discipline and effectiveness. The Grande Armée, Napoleon's elite military force, relied on strict discipline and training, reminiscent of the Roman legions. Rapid maneuver warfare, inspired by ancient Roman mobility. Charismatic leadership, where officers fought alongside their men, just like centurions. Napoleon's success validated Roman military principles in the modern era, influencing armies across Europe. The centurion's legacy in 20th and 21st century warfare. World War I and II. Industrialized warfare and officer leadership. In the 20th century, warfare became highly mechanized, but the principles of Roman leadership endured. Junior officers, lieutenants, and captains played the role of modern centurions, leading troops into battle. Non-commissioned officers, sergeants, and corporals acted as disciplinarians and battlefield commanders, similar to centurions. The concept of unit cohesion, discipline, and morale remained essential, just as it was in the Roman legions. Despite technological advancements, the Roman model of military leadership remained highly relevant. The United States Marine Corps, the last Roman legion. Modern military forces, particularly the United States Marine Corps USMC, still reflect centurion traditions. Small unit leadership is paramount, just like in the Roman army. NCO sergeants enforce discipline and lead tactical operations, resembling centurions. Leading from the front remains a core value, as it was in Roman warfare. The Marine ethos of adaptability, resilience, and strict discipline mirrors the professionalism of Rome's centurions, proving that their legacy is far from extinct. The eternal influence of the centurion. From Rome's mighty legions to modern militaries, the centurion's legacy has endured for over 2 millennia. While warfare has evolved from swords and shields to machine guns and cyber warfare, the core principles of centurion leadership, discipline, tactical skill, and frontline command remain unchanged. Even today, the structure of modern armies, the leadership style of officers, and the philosophy of leading from the front can be traced back to these ancient warriors. The Roman centurion may no longer exist, but his spirit marches on in every soldier who commands with courage, strategy, and discipline.